I'm sure you all know what a toolbox is, though I must confess I'm not really that good at DIY. However, a tool can be anything from a physical thing to a conceptual planning instrument. For example, if I want to put up a shelf in my apartment, I'll probably need the drill and screwdriver, I think, not sure what else. But very often in facilitation workshops, we use thinking tools. You may have heard of the Bono's thinking apps, morphological matrices, force field analysis. These are tools because essentially what a tool does, it helps us to perform an operation. And very often it's to achieve a particular goal. So the physical toolbox usually means that we want to improve something in a physical environment. And when we use thinking tools, it's because we want to get people to be more organized in the way they go about the thinking process. I'd like us to look carefully at this quote by Bransford, pretty famous in the area of developing the science of learning. And this is his question, or his reply to a question, asking which teaching method, technique, is best, is analogous to asking what tool is best, hammer, screwdriver, knife, pliers, etc. Now, in teaching, as in carpentry, the selection of tools depends on the task at hand and materials one is working with. So, if we apply it to teaching, firstly, our task may well be, well, we want to make the learning experience more interesting for students. We want to get across the purpose of our goal. We want to make the task more authentic. And when we do that, we have to look at the students one's working with. Sometimes we have highly motivated students, so it's not terribly difficult to do the task. Sometimes we may not. And the same is true in putting up some shelves in the apartment. The wall may be very firm. We may have a really good drill with the right bits. So that all works very nicely. Now, outside of teaching, but in any area of work, what are we doing? We are doing a series of processes, a series of activities that's connected to our professional working role. So a tool essentially is something that is going to help us perform these tasks and achieve our goals more efficiently and effectively. And let's think about questions here. A couple of lovely quotes, one from Anthony Robbins, one by Ellen Langer. You can read those yourself, but we've got to ask the big questions when we go about using technology tools. For example, in the context of teaching, what are the teaching questions or challenges that we're trying to address? Now, certainly, as we know, these can vary from student group to student group over time, and sometimes even on the same day. And similarly, in any work environment, tasks are changing and sometimes they're challenging, and we have to find ways in which to meet those tasks. And the big question is, can technology, particular e-tools, help us to do that? So there's one more slide. Let's move on to it. How do you build your digital toolbox? Now, we know there's lots of tools, so the question is, to use another metaphor, how do we see the wood from the tree, so to speak? Well, again, we're starting with a big pedagogic question or challenge, or any other work challenge that you might be facing. And here is the big question. Will this e-tool or e-tool combination, now that's a big point, that we can combine technology tools, just like we combine teaching methods. Will it enhance an important aspect or different aspects of the learning process? And what we mean here is, will it activate their prior learning and help them to connect new knowledge? Will it help them to memorize key information? Will it help them to think, maybe to communicate and co-create? There's different aspects of the learning process. So that's the big question. So let's be more specific. For example, will it evoke the curiosity of our students? Generate interest in what is to be learned? As we know, if students are not interested, they're pretty unlikely to give attention. If they don't give attention, they don't learn. And the same is often true in other work contexts. If people are given things to do, they're not really going to put the same level of attention or interest into the task. So that's a big thing. Will the tool evoke curiosity? In terms of students, will it help them connect the new learning to what they already know? And there's so much information around. Can the tool help to teach the key concepts that are important for understanding a topic area more effectively, efficiently? As we know, students don't want to be passive, and people doing tasks want to be actively involved in achieving their goals. So will it provide an active learning context to get people thinking and making the necessary connections in the learning process, communicating and collaborating with others when necessary? And if you've got to develop a skill, then you're going to need opportunities for good practice, not just practice, deliberate practice that's very focused on using the tool better to meet the particular outcomes that that tool might help you to achieve. For example, I'm not terribly good at a drill, so to get good at drilling and not make a mess of my wall, I may have to put some practice in so that I'm able to make a nice clear hole. And again, we know one of the very big things that's important in learning anything is getting quick and targeted feedback. That's feedback on our task, how well we're doing it, are we achieving competence in the right process of learning. And feedback can come from our teachers, it can come from our peers, and what we want is feedback from relevant sources that's going to help us to learn. Now, there's a number of things there. You can digest those yourself. Not more than 7, so it shouldn't create too much cognitive overload. There's one more. What we also know about learning is that it's much better when there's a nice, what's called psychological climate. And that is the kind of atmosphere, the energy in the classroom. And we know that if it's success orientated and if it's fun, that's pretty good for relationship building and for motivation. And here we go, another analogy, a Russian doll. Now, I think you know what that is, but if not, it's a series of dolls of varying sizes that you can put one inside another. Why anybody would want to have one, I really don't know. But it's a great analogy because what this means is that just like with methods, if we combine methods that are effective for our students into one teaching strategy, it's going to have a much bigger impact on the learning process. And what we want, as we know, is to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of what we're doing. And given that a key skill these days, it's always been an important skill, but particularly emphasized today, creativity. Creativity in using methods and using tools is to combine them together to maximize effectiveness and efficiency for the task in hand. Whether that task is helping learners to learn difficult topics, or whether it's working in administration and trying to help our colleagues to organise and do tasks more effectively and efficiently. So that's the Russian doll analogy, and it fits in nicely with the analogy of the toolbox. And the last point is this, that how do we get good at building our digital toolbox? Well, it's not going to happen overnight. You will need practice with those key tools that you feel that you eventually try out, analyse and evaluate, that seem to have the kind of impacts on your big questions and your educational challenges, or other aspects of your work role, like helping colleagues to provide new ways of organising their schedules. And just like learning any other skill, it will require practice, feedback, and a bit of persistence over time. So you build your toolbox up slowly. Don't try to do too many things at once. It won't work. You will find that there's not enough time, and we know we're pretty busy folk. So hopefully this short screencast has given you a frame for thinking about how you build your toolbox and how you go about selecting those tools. And most importantly, learning to use those tools to get the results that you want.